Hi, I'm Dr. Jacqueline Kerr. As a scientist, I used to sit in regional, state, and international meetings discussing how to build more healthy, sustainable cities. But progress was really slow on the ground, where it mattered most. So I shifted tactics to sponsoring local residents to lead change and trained them to support their peers and advocate for infrastructure and policy support. I was amazed at the results, and I was able to use my science to evaluate the impact. I share this change story with you today because I've been trying to use my science to tell you what to do differently. I had forgotten that people lead change, and their stories are so much more powerful. I hope these everyday stories of change that I share in this recording inspire you. My 16-year-old son, Callum, helped me bring it to life. There are people everywhere who can help you lead change. Let's discover them together.
Take control, you're a fighter. Push the limits and see it, you're already there. Told you we going higher. Ain't no stopping us, we're going in for the win. And we're gonna celebrate. Then we're gonna do it all over again. And we're gonna rock this place, 'cause this is our day. We're gonna do it together, through any weather, rain, sleet, storm or hell. We're gonna prove it together, move it together. There's no option to fail.
Hidden Networks, uncovering inspirational leaders in unexpected places.
A people-powered sustainability story by leading real change. Chapter 1, The Weight of the World. It was February 2025 at Verdant Inc. Chrissy leaned back in her office chair, rubbing her temples as she stared at the finalized CSRD report on her screen. It was done. Months of work, endless revisions, and late-night calls with legal and finance, only for the EU regulations to shift at the last minute. Had it been worth it? She glanced at her phone. 6:47 p.m. Too late to make it home for dinner. Again. Her two kids, both in middle school, had grown used to her long days. Her husband tried to help, but the balance was off. She missed the hikes they used to take as a family, the easy weekends wandering the farmer's market, chatting with local growers. These days, all she had was airport coffee and spreadsheets. At Verdant, the company she'd poured years into, sustainability had once felt like a mission. Building their first ESG plan, securing executive buy-in, shaping a net zero roadmap. She loved that part. But now it felt like she was chasing an ever-moving finish line, drowning in data requests, new regulations, and Scope 3 headaches. Scope 3. That part of the supply chain she couldn't control, but had to account for anyway. Farmers, processors, packaging suppliers, distributors, every piece of the puzzle was her responsibility. The C-suite still backed her, but their patience was wearing thin. ROI expectations were growing. Sustainability had to be more than a compliance exercise. She was worried. Burnout seemed to be spreading through her team. The data demands had sucked the energy out of sustainability. It wasn't about impact anymore. It was about numbers, audits, and fear of being called out in the press. To make it worse, other companies were getting ahead. Some seemed to have it under control, while Verdant was still buried in reporting cycles. Her inbox pinged. A board member forwarding an article. Why companies are falling behind on net zero. Chrissy sighed. She needed a break. Time to step back, reconnect with why she started this work. But with political backlash rising, changing regulations, and constant scrutiny, there was no good time to walk away. Something had to change. She just didn't know what. She sighed and went back to the new report. But she realized with emptiness in her gut that it left her feeling cold. Where had her passion gone? Do you recognize yourself in Chrissy? What's different about your work and life? Next, we meet Kathy. She's just a consumer, but somehow she becomes a catalyst for change. Chapter 2, A Reason to Wake Up. Kathy had never been one to sit still. For most of her life, there had always been someone to care for, something to do, somewhere to be. First, it was raising her kids, then it was helping with the grandkids whenever she could, and before that, it had been years of work, balancing schedules, running a home, keeping everything moving. Now, the house was too quiet. It had been 6 months since her husband passed. 6 months of silence. 6 months of waking up and wondering, what am I supposed to do now? She loved her book club. Pickleball gave her a reason to get out the house, but after the games were over, after the last page of the book had been discussed, she still felt the same empty ache. She hated that feeling. Kathy had always believed in pulling her weight, in contributing, but now she felt like a burden, like an extra person in a world that was moving on and not always in the right direction. She needed something real, a sign of hope. One evening, Kathy sat scrolling on her tablet, a cup of tea growing cold beside her. She wasn't even sure what she was looking for. Volunteer work, social club, maybe a class at the library. Then she saw it. Willowbrook, an age-friendly city. She clicked. It was a program designed to keep older adults engaged, connected, and active in their community. There were resources, programs, even job postings. Kathy hesitated. She hadn't worked in years, not since retirement. But wasn't that the problem? She scrolled through the listings until one caught her eye. Sustainability assistant, Maplewood Grocery, part-time. Help customers make sustainable shopping choices. She read it again and again. It wasn't just a job. It was helping the planet, helping people, guiding them towards better choices, less packaging, fair trade goods, local produce, things that mattered. She could do that. She wanted to do that. For the first time in a long time, Kathy felt a spark of hope, a flicker of purpose. Maybe she still had something to give. Do you know someone like Kathy? Have you ever wondered what life skills they have that you could learn from? Next up, Mark, the marketing manager. He's a central character in this tale of transformation.
Chapter 3, The Right Message, the Right Moment. Mark thrived on problems that needed solving. It was what made him good at marketing, the constant puzzle of figuring out what people wanted, what they needed, and most importantly, how to get them to act. But lately, nothing was working the way it should. The product labeling experiment had been his baby. He had designed it to help shoppers make more sustainable choices, labels that highlighted better packaging, ethical sourcing, and lower carbon footprints. It made sense. It should have worked, but it didn't. People found the different price points confusing. They didn't understand what the labels were actually telling them to do. And just when he was starting to tweak the approach, the retailer pulled the plug. He had failed. He just needed to figure out why. Mark still believed smart data could crack the code. His latest obsession? In-home energy and water tracking. AI could predict who might change their habits, but not how to make them care. Take EV charging. The data showed that people should plug in their cars at night when demand was low, but they weren't. Why? Probably because by the time they got home, they were tired, distracted, and done making decisions. What might actually get them to change? A better message? A different nudge? A reminder at the right moment? He needed to talk to the behavior science folks, see what was working with these just-in-time interventions. But Mark had been distracted from his analyses. He had been transferred to assist on Verdant's latest corporate video, putting a positive spin on the sustainability goals they had missed and had to reset. He hated this part of the job. One of the EV drivers in the video had nailed it. "This isn't going to change anything," the guy had grumbled. "Someone needs to talk to their local council about charging stations. Is anyone even doing that?" Mark had no idea. Were they? The data, the messaging, the interventions, they were all pieces of the puzzle, But if no one was actually getting things done on the ground, what was the point? But maybe it was time for his own reset. Maybe he needed to find the people actually making change happen and make sure his work helped them, not just Verdant's brand image.
What new tools are your marketing team using to reach consumers? Up next, Mark faces his failures. Chapter 4, Seeing Change in Action.
Mark hadn't planned on stalking an elderly woman around a grocery store, but here he was. After his failed labeling experiment, he needed to figure out what went wrong. He'd convinced himself that if he just watched customers more closely, he'd see the gaps, see where the labels failed to connect. But what he hadn't expected was Kathy. As Mark stepped into the store, he spotted her greeting another customer, an older woman named Nancy, judging by their conversation.
I'll take you around with my sustainability glasses on, Kathy said with a grin. Nancy laughed. That sounds fancy. What does that mean? It just means I'll show you what most people don't see.
Mark was intrigued. He kept a few steps behind, watching as Kathy turned an ordinary shopping trip into something else entirely. At the bulk refill station, she pointed out how Nancy could reuse containers instead of buying new ones. At the packaged goods aisle, she found less noticeable brands, ones with minimal packaging, lower emissions, and fair labor practices. In the produce section, she explained why local foods had a smaller carbon footprint. She checked expiration dates, helping Nancy avoid food waste. She even pointed out the slave-free chocolate and coffee.
Not all fair trade claims are equal, she said, but this brand, they mean it. At the checkout, Nancy realized she'd forgotten her cloth bag. Kathy handed her one, for free. This one's on me, and look. She flipped it over, revealing a QR code. Scan this if you want to learn more. By the end of the trip, Nancy wasn't just impressed. She was inspired. I trust you, she told Kathy, not those advertising claims.
Mark recoiled a little. This woman had done in 15 minutes what his marketing team had struggled to do for months.
Nancy shook her head, still in awe. Oh, I wish I could be confident like you. You can, Kathy smiled. We're hiring and training new ambassadors. And guess what? I'm leading the training. You'll just follow along with me. I'll make it easy. Nancy's face lit up. She took the flyer Kathy handed her and walked off, a spring in her step. And then Kathy turned, right toward Mark. Young man, can I help you? You've been skulking behind me this whole time. If you need a tour, just ask. There's another ambassador by the door.
Mark swallowed. Busted. Sorry, he admitted. It's just, I was amazed at what you did. I've been trying to change behaviors like this through labels and ads, but what you did here, it actually worked.
Kathy raised an eyebrow. And you are?
Mark, marketing team, Verdant.
She considered him for a second, then shrugged. Well, Mark from marketing, I'm heading for a break. You coming? I can tell you more if you like.
Mark nodded, still processing what he had just seen. Yeah, I'd really like that.
Can you imagine walking around a store with Kathy? What would she say about your products? Next up, meet Sally, a sustainability leader who's looking for purpose, but finds it in an unexpected place. Chapter 5, The Seeds of Change. Sally stared at the spreadsheet on her screen, the endless rows of emissions data blurring together. She sighed, stretched out her back from too much sitting. She should request a standing desk. This wasn't what she had signed up for. She had joined Verdant because she wanted to make a difference. Sustainability wasn't just a career for her, it was a mission. But instead of real change, she was buried in compliance reports and Scope 3 calculations that felt disconnected from the world outside. At least once a year, they did the tree planting event, her favorite day at work. Hands in the dirt, fresh air, real impact. But one day of tree planting wasn't going to fix the climate crisis, and it sure wasn't enough to keep her motivated. She needed more. Lately, Sally had been feeling restless. She watched as her friends built their lives, getting married, having kids, moving forward. She wasn't in a rush for that, but she did want to feel like she was growing. The problem? Her job felt stuck. Verdant was a good company, ethical, well-intentioned, but they weren't leading. They were following, reacting to regulations, tweaking reports, but not inspiring real change. And when she looked at her own career, the leadership opportunities felt absent. The training programs were all about personal development, not leading others. The sustainability workshops she helped run for other employees felt more like checkbox exercises than motivating calls to action. The CSO, Chrissy, was always too busy to mentor her. Sally wasn't naive. She knew companies were struggling right now. Some jobs were being cut. She was lucky to have a job at all. But if Verdant didn't change, she would have to. She shut her laptop and grabbed her jacket. Enough screens, enough reports. She needed air. As she walked toward the park, she thought about the trees they had planted last year. Were they thriving, or had they been forgotten, planted for a good photo op and left to fend for themselves? She hoped not. She needed to see them, to remind herself that small actions could still matter. That growth took time. Could her role at Verdant evolve? Do you have a Sally on your team? What are the signs of burnout you see? Next up, Fred, the local farmer. He's feeling the pressure and about to pop.
Chapter 6. The Weight of the Land. Fred wasn't one to dwell on bad meetings. There was always work to do, fields to tend, equipment to fix, animals to feed. Farming didn't leave much time for self-pity. But today, as he sat on his porch, stroking Chip's head, the weight of last week's meeting with Verdant still hung over him. They had called him in like he was a schoolboy in trouble. They had flashed numbers at him, his energy and water usage, projected against some AI model that said he was falling behind. If you don't improve efficiency, you could lose your contract. Fred had sat there, jaw tight, listening to people who never set foot on his land tell him how to run it. He understood the pressure Verdant was under. Big corporations had their own sustainability targets, but they didn't seem to understand his pressure. Margins were razor thin. Weather was unpredictable. He couldn't afford to gamble on changes that might not work. He had pushed back, asking for time, for more support, for something besides a warning, but all he got was a polite dismissal. We'll check back in next quarter. It felt less like a partnership and more like a threat. He let out a long breath, looking out at the land he had worked for decades on. This farm had been in his family for 3 generations. He wasn't about to lose it to a spreadsheet. He glanced at his watch. Damn, he was going to be late. He stood up, stretching, and gave Chip one last pat. The Farmers Collaborative was the best part of his week, a place where farmers actually helped each other instead of playing some corporate game, where people who understood the land shared what actually worked, not theories, not projections, but real, lived experience. Fred didn't know if Verdant would ever see farmers as partners instead of data points. But today, he wasn't thinking about them. Today, he was thinking about his people and making sure they didn't get left behind.
What pressures are your suppliers under right now? Up next, Fred shows his true colors. Chapter 7. A different light. Sally hadn't come to the farmer's market looking for answers. She had come for tacos. But as she sank into a bench, plate in hand, she noticed a small group gathered off to the side, mostly young farmers, listening intently to the man up front. Something about his voice was familiar. She glanced up. It was Fred Jones. The same grumpy, frustrated farmer from last week's meeting was standing before this group like a leader. Sally blinked. He wasn't defensive or closed off like he'd been in the boardroom. Here, he was comfortable, confident, and in control. She listened as he spoke about soil health, yield improvements, and how they could keep their farms profitable without ruining their land.
The big guys in the city don't always know what works, he was saying. But we do. We see it every day. And if we share what we know, we all get better.
Sally sat back, stunned. This was the same man who had dismissed every single suggestion from her team. Then the meeting wrapped up. The farmers lingered, talking, trading ideas, asking Fred more questions. Sally hesitated, then made her way over. Mr. Jones?
Fred turned, then chuckled. When my old principal called me that, who's asking? Then his smile faded. He had spotted her verdant name badge. Are you checking up on me? He asked, arms crossed.
Not at all, Sally said quickly. I was just taking a break from the spreadsheets, and honestly, I wasn't sure I recognized you.
Fred muttered something under his breath.
What was that? Sally asked.
Damn spreadsheets, he repeated louder.
She raised an eyebrow. What do you mean?
You corporate types sit in your head office looking at numbers, but you forget you're dealing with people. We're out here day after day, working the land, looking out for each other. This group, these are the next generation of farmers, and I'm teaching them how to save the soil and increase their yields. This isn't just about me, it's about them. You know, this will save your business too, in the long run.
Sally felt a wave of guilt. She had no idea Fred was so invested in regenerative farming. He hadn't mentioned any of this in the meeting last week, just pushed back against their suggested water and energy cuts. So why fight us so hard? She asked.
Fred studied her, then shrugged. Because you didn't ask the right questions. He paused, then softened slightly. I'm sorry, I know it's not your fault, but I'm worried about my farm, and I don't think your company sees my role as important. Yet, these farmers, they depend on me. I translate industry knowledge into real steps that work on their farms. They come to my land, see it working, and feel confident trying it for themselves. That's how change happens, not through some corporate directive.
Sally frowned, not in disagreement. So you're saying if Verdant actually came out here more often...
They might see things in a different light, Fred finished.
And suddenly Sally got it. The missing piece. The thing she'd been looking for. She wanted more than reports, more than an annual tree planting day. She wanted this. Real work, real leadership, real impact happening in the field, not just on the spreadsheet. Fred, she said slowly, if I set up another meeting, would you be open to it? One that happens on your terms?
Fred gave her a long, measuring look. Then he nodded. Yeah, maybe I would.
When have you learned something hands-on from a peer more easily than in a textbook? Up next, Stan, the supply chain manager, who is not having a good week.
Chapter 8. The Things We Can Control. Stan hated food waste. Not because he was some perfect sustainability guy. He wasn't. He just hated wasting money. But there he was, standing in front of his fridge, pulling out a wilted head of lettuce. Well, that's done for, he muttered, tossing it into the compost bin. He paused, rubbing his face. Dinner. It was his turn to cook. His wife was on night shift, and the kids would be home soon, expecting something that wasn't cereal for dinner. His mind wasn't really on dinner, though. It was on the disaster at work. Verdant had missed their EV targets, and the corporate messaging campaign didn't make him feel any better. Sure, it had kept the PR backlash at bay, but it hadn't solved the problem. The issue wasn't the supply chain. The issue wasn't the transition plan. The issue was infrastructure, or lack of it. Without local investment in charging stations, they were always going to miss their target. And there wasn't a damn thing he could do about that. His negative thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. Carmen. He opened it to find her usual bright smile, reusable containers in hand.
Got anything good for me this week? She asked, peeking into his compost bin.
Stan smirked. Lettuce and regret.
She laughed. Regret makes great fertilizer.
Stan wasn't sure why he still bothered composting. If it weren't for Carmen in her community garden, he probably wouldn't. But every week, she showed up, reminding him that even the smallest actions mattered. And maybe, just maybe, this was what change looked like. Not a corporate target, Not a polished video, just one small, real thing at a time. Hey, Carmen, he said, leaning against the doorframe. Out of curiosity, how are you managing with EV charging around here?
She grinned. Funny you should ask. When has a friend helped you stay accountable on a difficult task? Up next, Carmen reveals her secret sauce. Chapter 9, Behind the Scenes of Change. Carmen never rushed her tea. She had learned a long time ago that change didn't happen overnight. It took patience, persistence, and the right conversations.
Stan, on the other hand, looked like he was about to explode from impatience as he sat across from her. So, he asked, how do you manage to run all your routes with an EV?
Carmen smiled. I don't, she said simply.
Wait, what?
I don't do as much work in Willowbrook here because the charging infrastructure is terrible. But in the next town over, I help get that change.
Stan leaned forward. What do you mean?
Carmen took a slow sip of tea, then set down her mug. I invited one of our local council members to ride along with me for a day. I took him to Green Acres, the one with charging stations on every lot, and pointed out all the stations I helped get installed.
You got them installed?
Sort of. See, these guys, politicians, council members, they don't make decisions in meetings. You show up and protest, and they just get defensive. You have to show them something positive first. So I took him around, showed him how the next town had better infrastructure, how it helped small businesses reduce costs and serve more people. Then I said, your people are missing out.
And that worked?
Carmen grinned. Well, it didn't hurt that he got a great photo op out in the community for the local paper. Good press equals more votes. And I reminded him that I'm a voter too, that I serve his constituents. The people here needed composting help, and my program had cut waste in local landfills. I didn't ask for a favor. I showed him how saying yes to me made him look good.
Stan shook his head, stunned. He had spent years managing global supply chains, sitting in endless meetings trying to make progress on infrastructure. Nothing ever changed. But Carmen had figured it out.
Carmen took another sip of tea. So tell me, Stan, what's your company doing to support composting?
Stan opened his mouth, then closed it. I don't know.
Carmen shrugged. Then maybe that's where you start.
Stan sat back, replaying their conversation. Then he remembered the EV driver from the Verdant video shoot. Someone needs to go to a council meeting, the driver had said. But Carmen was right. That wasn't how things got done. Change didn't happen in public debates. It happened behind the scenes, led by people like Carmen. For the first time in a long time, Stan saw a way forward. Verdant was off track because they were looking for solutions in the wrong places.
Who in your community is like Carmen? Who shows up and gets things done? Up next, the showdown.
Chapter 10. Seeing Through a New Lens.
Chrissy loved her open door policy until days like this. Sally, Mark, Stan, all talking at once. And then there were the two women she didn't recognize. One smiling like she ran the place, and the other watching everything with quiet confidence. Of course, there was Fred, the reluctant farmer from last week's disaster of a meeting. Chrissy hadn't seen her team this excited since, what? The last tree planting event? That was too long ago. All right, she sighed, raising a hand for silence. Mark, you go first.
We've been struggling to change customer behavior, he admitted.
Kathy and Carmen exchanged knowing looks.
I tried in-store labeling. It failed. Mark hesitated, then grinned sheepishly. I followed Kathy around the store.
Chrissy raised an eyebrow.
Not creepy, I promise. I saw what she was doing, and she changed her neighbor Nancy's behavior in minutes. No ad campaign, no digital intervention, just real conversation. Mark turned to Kathy. You tell her.
Kathy didn't hesitate. Customers don't trust your labels. They don't see the smaller, less packaged products on the shelves. The refill stations are just confusing. And for older customers, the refill containers are too heavy for them to carry. I can help with that, Carmen jumped in. I could do home refills for seniors. It would reduce waste and save them the trip. Chrissy leaned forward. Wait, you already run a local program? Carmen nodded. Yep, been doing it for years.
Mark was practically bouncing. And this is big. Sales of sustainable products have gone up since Kathy started. I ran the numbers. Her approach actually works.
Chrissy blinked. This wasn't just a feel-good initiative. This was real, measurable impact. Okay, she said slowly. So who is running this? It's a coalition of companies, Kathy explained. They accept new members all the time. They understand that they all benefit when customers are supported to make better choices. Chrissy tapped her fingers on the desk. Sounds easy enough, but I don't just want to talk with other CSOs. Can we hear from Kathy each quarter?
Mark grinned. Chrissy got it. Customer insights weren't one-time reports. They were ongoing.
Sally took over next, gesturing to Fred. Fred has something to say. Chrissy crossed her arms. Are you willing to prioritize our agenda, not just yours? She said, skeptical.
Fred winced. Look, I pushed back because I couldn't trust the AI model. It told me what to do, but I needed time to test if it actually worked on my farm. Mark perked up. That's exactly my problem with smart home data. It tells me who needs to change, not how to help them. We still don't have the messages right. Fred nodded. I can be your messenger, but only after I test it first. If I prove it works, farmers will actually listen.
Chrissy tilted her head. She hadn't thought much about who delivered the message. She'd been trained to think of influencers and celebrities. But Fred? Fred had credibility in a way no corporate campaign ever could. Stan went last, or rather, he let Carmen take over. As she talked about how she got her town council to install EV charging stations, Mark suddenly remembered the disparaging comment from the driver at the video shoot.
Someone needs to go to a council meeting.
But Carmen had cracked the code. Instead of fighting decision makers, she had made them want to say yes.
Mark felt a sinking realization. What if, he said slowly, instead of spending all that money on a PR video, we sponsored Carmen instead?
Chrissy sat back in her chair. She looked at her team. Their energy, their ideas, their initiative. No one had used PowerPoint. No one had presented data. And yet this was the most productive and invigorating conversation she'd been part of in months. I'm impressed, she admitted. Really impressed. Good work. You didn't just bring me problems. You brought me the people solving them. She looked around the room. Different backgrounds, different ages, but all wanting the same thing. A purpose, a future worth fighting for. And suddenly, Chrissy felt something she hadn't in a long time. Hope. All right, she said, sitting up. Here's what we're going to do. I'm allocating some of our personal development funds to this initiative. You're going to become a leadership collective, cross-functional, cross-sector. You'll meet once a month and bring new ideas for us to test. I'll facilitate the meetings so we stay on track. Is everyone committed to making this work? Eager nods all around. They all sat up taller, ready to share their knowledge and learn. Good, she said. Then let's schedule our first meeting. And Fred, let's talk about that pilot you're willing to lead. As the group filed out, Chrissy didn't turn back to her laptop. She closed it. She needed to get outside more, spend more time with the family. She needed to see things through a new lens. That night, at dinner with her family, Chrissy felt more present, more connected, and less worried about the future. As the kids proudly cleared the dinner table, she realized she didn't have to do everything or direct everyone. People enjoyed sharing the load, and people, not data, got things done. She felt confident she found the right people to take Verdant to the next level, leaving her more time to enjoy the people and the world they were fighting for. Who was the most influential character in the story, and why? What sustainability leadership secrets did you uncover? What surprised you most? What sustainability strategies are not working at Verdant? Are they the same for you? When was the last time you and your team were really excited? How could you see this story playing out in your organization? What would you change? The next step in your journey is to ask your own questions. Who are my hidden champions? Who am I overlooking? What are we learning from our current stakeholder engagement strategy? How are we listening to frontline employees? What peer-to-peer learning projects are already working? What if we replaced one corporate campaign with a local leadership initiative? You may want to follow up with more detailed questions for different stakeholders in your value chain. For example, internal teams, procurement, philanthropy, marketing, and external teams, suppliers, customers, and community leaders. Our one-page conversation starter guide can help you, and you can find it on our website at www.leading-real-change.com. We'd love to guide you on the next steps of your journey. We're here to support you to pilot and adapt these initiatives in your company. It starts small, but with some change science sprinkled in, it can scale and spread faster than you realize. To activate the hidden leaders in your value chain, you can book a free strategy session with me today at leadingrealchange.com. If you're not ready to talk, I understand, but at least share this story with one of your colleagues and ask them who is the hero they see and who do they want to be. Ask them the questions I have asked and see if they have the same answers as you. Maybe they will reveal something unexpected to you, and together you can start a new journey from a new point of view. Thank you for listening today and joining me on this adventure.
Take control, you're a fighter. Push the limits and see it, you're already there. Told you we going higher. Ain't no stopping us, we're going in for the win. And we're gonna celebrate. Then we're gonna do it all over again. And we're gonna rock this place, 'cause this is our day. We're gonna do it together, through any weather, rain, sleet, storm, or hail. We're gonna prove it together, move it together. There's no option to fail. We're gonna do it together, through any weather, rain, sleet, storm, or hail. We're gonna prove it together, move it together. There's no option to fail. Close your eyes, feel the power. Everything that you need